On Wednesday, January 6th, incited by our president, his friends, and family, thousands of people charged the Capitol building where our legislators were holding an important vote. Having been fed a steady diet of lies, these rioters believed they were protecting democracy by way of violent insurrection. The viral video of a woman from Knoxville, I hope you all saw it. She was named Elizabeth, who, on the one hand, in her words, was storming the Capitol because it's a revolution, and on the other hand, is angry because no one told her there might be mace, demonstrates white entitlement perfectly, giving us a clear window into the mindset of the domestic terrorists we saw in action. The President of the United States has been howling about a stolen election since 2016 when he warned everyone that if he lost, it's because someone else cheated. It's a song he's been singing since then, consistently sure that Clinton didn't win the popular vote, and then warning that the only way he can lose in 2020 is if the same forces engage illegal options. Never fully letting it go, Trump and his enablers have ramped up this rhetoric, screaming louder each time the claims are proven false, hoping to drown out truth in their spew of lies. With conservative media fully engaged in this propaganda campaign and social media creating a massive echo chamber, millions of Americans have lost touch with facts and are living in an alternative reality where conspiracy theories thrive and the nation is being stolen before their eyes. Today, we're celebrating Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his revolutionary approach to institutional racism. His grounded nonviolence, taken from Gandhi's innovative method, transformed our nation. Gandhi's Hinduism embraced the religious principle of radical connection and of ahimsa, the principle of nonviolence that follows. Taking that further, Gandhi introduced satyagraha, a witness to truth, or more specifically, a clinging to truth. We live in an illusion of separateness, as if we are each individuals, but we come from and return to the same source. We are wildly, radically connected, like a wave from an ocean crashing on a rock, right? Each drop might think it's separate, but it will quickly return to the ocean to become one with the whole. That is the truth that powered Gandhi's nonviolence and from which King found his own Christianity enlivened. When colleagues eager to end racial segregation told Reverend King they didn't like nonviolence as a strategy because it felt like giving in, King told them it wasn't a strategy at all. It is a truth. It is a spiritual principle. Choosing violence, he said, was moving Black people backward. Instead, he wanted to move white people forward into the truth. In his own language, the truth he was clinging to with his whole body was the love of God. He saw this as the life force that powered his action. Ahimsa is the recognition that all life is connected, all life is sacred. Gandhi's satyagraha, soul force or truth force or love force, speaks to the recognition of our unity and the necessity for nonviolence as an active embodiment of truth. It is powerful. It is power itself. It's a knowing that violence is a sign of brokenness, and nonviolent resistance is an insistence on truth, an insistence on the power of the truth of our oneness. And speaking of Gandhi, that 20th century American contemplative Thomas Merton wrote, Gandhi's nonviolence was not simply a political tactic, which was supremely useful and efficacious in liberating his people. On the contrary, the spirit of nonviolence sprang from an inner realization of spiritual unity in himself. The whole Gandhian concept of nonviolent action and satyagraha is incomprehensible if it's thought to be a means of achieving unity rather than the fruit of inner unity already achieved. Nonviolence is the consequence of inner unity. Violence is the consequence of inner brokenness. Satyagraha doesn't allow for enemies, but for love to take over, to be patient with falsity, to create a mirror for wrong, to recognize itself and reconcile with right. Traditional Unitarianism taught that God is one. Unitarians introduced the notion that life is not divided, that we are wildly, radically interconnected. They understood the source of our existence to be singular, Unitarian, not one God, Unitarian, not Trinitarian, three gods, right? They extended that concept to include all of life. We codified it in our seventh principle. And the Universalists believe that aside from being unified, we are blessed, we are saved. Every single one of us, every person on the planet, enemies included, regardless of how wrong or violent, everyone is saved. There are ways in which this theology seems obvious or irrelevant. I mean, who talks about salvation anymore? But there are ways in which it's still radical. Everyone is saved. Everyone is loved. The husband who beats his wife, the police officer who shoots an unarmed teen, the government official who drops bombs on civilians on foreign soil, the right-wing fanatic looking to assassinate our vice president, they are all saved. They are all from the same source. We will all return to the same ocean. Love practice cannot be overcome, but practicing love is a difficult task. If I love my adversary, it's evidenced by my willingness to be taught by them. It's evidenced by my acceptance of their full humanity rather than my reduction of them to cruelty or incompetence or narcissism or greed or just plain stupidity. If I love them, I'm not seeking to outwit or outdo them in some way, but to enter sincere dialogue. The power of love is that it witnesses to truth. That's the message of our faith. And it's the message of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. But what happens when truth is completely inaccessible? Is it possible to move society forward the way 20th century leaders did when truth is hidden behind so many lies? I studied peace and nonviolence for many years. I've really been wrestling with this question. The critique of nonviolence is that it won't work when the forces you are confronting are completely unmoved by your humanity. But the civil rights movement didn't actually change the white supremacists who had turned out their dogs on children or beat people senseless for crossing a bridge. Its power came from the witness to love they provided for the onlooker, for the person at home who saw it on TV. Those are the people who were waking up to truth. The white moderate, the casual racist, the people who hadn't given much thought to segregation, who just accepted the world they'd been given, those who practice nonviolence stand strong in their truth and interconnectedness, and those who witness it discover beauty and power. and come into that truth for themselves. It sounds lofty, and I suppose it is, but it's also supported by the evidence. Millions of people were converted as a result of witnessing nonviolent actions grounded in love. What we have today isn't so different from what we had through the 20th century. I mean, that riot last Wednesday, that was just more voter suppression. I mean, we've seen voter suppression since the 1860s. This isn't even the first time it was attempted using firearms. People of color voted. They came out, they were heard. There were many attempts at nullifying that vote, from the culling of the voter rolls to so-called poll watchers intimidating people online, to disinformation campaigns, to dozens of lawsuits, to threats of violence made on state officials, to direct personal illegal appeals from the president himself, to the astounding decision by some lawmakers not to certify the vote, and then ultimately to a mass uprising and a breach of the Capitol. I saw some of those angry rioters screaming en masse, and I thought, that's the face of white supremacy when it loses. That's the face of people who were told 100 different ways that they get what they want, who are now confronting a world in which they are no longer the only center of power. If it's not so different, the same tactics should work. Bearing witness to the truth of our interconnectedness and inner unity should convert the hearts and minds of the indifferent onlooker. The challenge is they aren't looking. Unlike the 20th century, when people had a general, even if jaded, faith in our institutions and mass media, today we are siloed, consuming only the information that reinforces what we already think we know. We live in a post-truth society where facts are irrelevant and spin is all that's left for millions of people. I'm reminded, though, that nonviolence wasn't a tactic. It's not a strategy. It's a witness. It's a witness to truth. And that truth doesn't change, even if others don't know it. It's far easier for me to think of those people as enemies, as people who are dangerously wrong, who are violent, stupid, and blindly following a con man cult leader who's feeding off their racism and anger. That's not only easy for me, it's reinforced by all the media I consume and by my own social circles. It's comforting to be in an echo chamber that reinforces my own worldview. But it's not helpful. It's not grounded in the deeper truth of our shared sources or our shared singular source. Nor does it lead me to my own inner wholeness. Instead, both I and we become further fragmented. To be clear, I'm not preaching against accountability. To achieve inner or national unity, first we love, we bear witness to truth. Next, we seek accountability and reconciliation. There is no peace without justice. The work of love isn't easy. Reverend King told us that. But it is necessary. It is the only way for us to live in peace. The alternative, frankly, is war, and no one wins a war. If we are seeking peace, then peace is the only way. Nonviolence has been preached from this pulpit for 100 years, and it is radical every time. This pulpit has changed and moved and relocated, and currently it's virtual, but the message has been the same. It is our religious task. It is the work of our faith to seek the truth that ends our fragmentation and brings us into internal and external unity. We are called to live in oneness and interconnectedness. the unity of being that brings everyone in from the margins and makes the center whole, holy, grounded in love, in recognition not only that the other, the enemy, is also born of love, but even more that there is no other. There is only one, and we all participate in the great mystery. Given the tumult of our political system, the heightened anxiety swirling around our nation, even the threats of violence bubbling under the surface of the national conversation, my message this morning will be tough to swallow. That's the danger of a religious life. If you came to church this morning hoping I'd wrap you in a soft blanket, this wasn't your morning. But if you came to learn how to be awake, to learn how to live into truth, how to witness to powerful love, to learn about the difficult road before us, welcome. I'm here with you, and we are in the right place. I'll close with the words of Reverend King, who told us, darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. Only love can do that.